Hello and welcome back. This is the round 6 recap. We had a lot more wins, and I've got a new co-host for today, Angelika Volkova. You know her as Chessborn on the gram. Thank you, Angelika, for joining.
Absolutely love it. I mean, the round 6 was truly a blast. We had so many decisive games. I'd love to cover them.
And of course, you want to know what happened with Sindarov, and you already know what happened because this is not a repeat from round 5 or round 4 or round 3. He won again. He has 5.5 out of 6. The 20-year-old is crushing it. By the way, before we get into the games, we did find out he has a picture of him and Hikaru when he was 7 years old. And he promised to get us that picture. So like and subscribe. Keep tuning in because I'm going to try to get that picture. He's also got one of Fabiano when he was 7 years old. I'm going to try to get those pictures up in one of the future rounds. I don't want to bug him too much. Let's get into the game because he played Wei Yi. And, we already said he won again. Now, Wei Yi struggled here. He spent about 30 minutes. And he finally went for it. And he played b4. Now, you don't have to take en passant, but he took here. And now, big decision. What was Sindarov thinking about here?
He was definitely thinking about taking the pawn on a3, but the problem is that after rook takes on a3, let's say rook takes a3, the bishop is taking back. Here there is a strong move rook a1, activating the rook on the a file, and suddenly white's pieces are much more active.
Yeah.
So he probably didn't want to open the file. Maybe we go forward with the line.
Let's do it, yeah, because now one of black's pieces is overworked. Classic puzzle rush tactic. Which piece is that?
That's a bishop.
Yeah. Well,
let's go.
Yeah. The bishop's actually, I would say the queen's overworked, though. Because
the queen, yes.
The queen is trying to guard the back rank and trying to guard the pawn from the bishop. And also, I think black's bishop was a bit overworked, too. Yeah. Anyway, so white would actually play this fantastic move. Bishop takes f6 with the idea that if the queen takes, then rook check picks off the rook. So now we have, and I'm going to embarrass myself, but actually, this is very funny that you're here. Because there's one video that I did where I actually sang the Eagles song Desperado. And it's one of my most watched videos. And I don't like to sing, but you love to sing.
Absolutely.
Do you know this song by the Eagles?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you sing Desperado as I play it? Go ahead. Why don't you come to your senses? Okay.
Yes,
I'm not singing. She's the queen of singing, Chessborn. Okay. So black's going to lose the rook anyway. Black would have taken. Okay.
Of course, because if you lose a rook, you anyway would have to take a pawn for it. So now, finally, you take the bishop, and the rook is sliding into a8. And suddenly we see that the king is a bit uncomfortable, although the white king is also uncomfortable on the king's side.
That's right. And Sindarov said he did not know who was better here. He does have some pawns for the exchange. And interestingly, he already has to play a little bit carefully because if he plays the move king to e7, first of all, rook b8 might be possible. Wei Yi said that in the press conference. But even this move, rook to g8, stopping a lot of the counterplay against the white king. And now Sindarov would like to play queen f4, but there's this nice reply by white. What's white going to do here?
Queen d2, because now the problem is that if black doesn't want to trade the queens and take the pawn on e4, queen is suddenly being active and sliding into g5, and all kind of checkmates are there possible.
Yeah, we have so many arrows. And you know what? Snakes are an endemic problem in Cyprus, and watch how this queen becomes a snake. She first checks here, then when you block, she checks here. And then when you block, she checks here. Wait, we're not done. You got to go here to guard your bishop. Then she checks here.
Oh my God.
Weirdly, there's no mate. Actually, she'll just take this pawn, and then the rook will come up. And in my world, I call this the reverse Oreo because you have the cream on the outside and the black cookie in the middle. Thank you for laughing. And I think the black is toast. So
some people would prefer that, probably.
Yeah. It's the double stuff Oreo. I'm looking for my first sponsorship, as you can tell. Now, technically, you actually could move your king to this square, but you could already see Sindarov thought that this was a game of 3 results. He didn't like this risk. So we go all the way back to this position after en passant. He just plays the move bishop to g4. And let's go a little bit faster in the game here. After
Absolutely.
b4, we'll make some moves. And now another critical decision here. You can see queen g4 actually trades into an endgame that may be actually okay for black because then a3 is weak. This bishop actually is strangely not terribly useful. But Sindarov didn't like it as much. So what did he choose instead?
He played queen e6 in this position. Also looking at the bishops, we see that there are more pawns for black on the dark squares, but the bishop is even better on d4. This is a bit of controversy, but very important. And now h3. Now white is not allowing queen g4 anymore and also giving a square for the king on h2 at some moment. So, of course, he would take a pawn.
Yeah,
and
why not?
Of course.
Okay. He's got the super strong bishop on d4, which cures a lot of ills, and he just gets his king to safety, starts getting his pawns rolling, and now we're going to fast forward to the moment that white actually maybe could have held in this position. White could have traded on c5, and then after takes, then doubled up, And then it was unclear if Sindarov's plan was to play the move queen to e2, but there's an absolutely fantastic response, which is?
Incredible. Rook d8 in this position. And the problem for black is that they're stalemated for a moment. Rook cannot take the rook on d8 because queen is hanging on e2. And in case queen takes on f2, first, white is going to recapture with a check with intermezzo. So first, black has to play a bit awkward move, but king g2, just to get out of all kind of pins. And then after taking on e8, so we play king g8 now, king g7, sorry, and then after trading the rooks, finally white is winning back the pawn. Of course, materially we see that an extra pawn for black, but it's not such a strong pawn in the position.
And I only have one question. You said intermezzo, but you live in Germany. You could have said Sitzenzug. So why'd you say intermezzo?
Because I'm with you here.
Just kidding.
But also look at the clock. 6 minutes on the clock for Wei. Of course, there was not enough time to make this decision and to find this.
Absolutely right. Okay. So, by the way, speaking of low time on the clock, I played a blitz game against a 12-year-old female champion of Cyprus. I'm going to bring that to YouTube. Things did not go that well. Okay. Speaking of clocks, but let's get back. Yeah, the players were very low on time, especially Wei Yi. I think Sindarov has used the clock correctly as a weapon. Remember, no increment in the first time control. So anyway, after takes and takes, here's the remaining moves of the game. He played queen e3. You can't trade because watch how black completely stymies white. You have to rush back to stop the pawn. And then he just gets his other pawn going. And even though white moves the king in, this is a position where white can never move.
This is called pens, when the pawns are moving and you cannot stop any of the pawns.
Yeah. So if you take, we'll just trade rooks and promote. And if you ever move the rook, then I'll give you this pawn to trade rooks and promote. So white can just never move and black can just move the king in or something. Probably you move the rook up. So to bring the king behind the rook, and then you just walk over and win. There's probably a million ways to win this position.
Absolutely. You just go and win all the pawns, the queen side. But anyway, queen f3 was played in the position, and now c4, all the pawns are marching. King f8, and we see the c pawn very strong, and f3 is breaking the defense of the king. So in order not to get, so to say, checks, he's trading the queens, and here in the rook endgame already.
Yeah, and Wei Yi resigned in this position because if pawn takes to get rid of some of those passed pawns, we would have just seen the move c2, and when you blockade, rook e2, and you can never get your king in the game. In fact, if your king walks to the rook, I'll just run away. And if you walk to my rook, I'll run back here. And as you get done walking back and forth, I'll just march my king in. It's a very sad position for white.
Truly stunning game from Sindarov. I cannot believe it. 5 wins out of 6 games. Incredible.
Yeah, 5.5 actually. And I asked him about Fabi's win, 7 straight wins in a row. I think there was a FIDE event where Topalov won 6.5 out of 7. But really, there's not a lot of modern comparisons. And his smile is so infectious. Have you got him in the fan zone yet, by the way?
Absolutely. The kids, we had a lot of kids in the fan zone. They truly loved it. I'm talking about that photo with 7-year-old. Maybe some of the 7-year-olds who made a photo with Sindarov today will, at some moment, 20 or 10 years later, will be at the Candice tournament. Who knows? And then they'll have the same picture. Say, oh, they had a picture with Sindarov.
Yeah, there are stories of Gukesh getting pictures, and he became world champion 10 years later. Anyway, Angelica is running the fan zone. It's pretty cool to hear her thoughts. There is not a person at this event that does not like Sindarov. Okay, I'm just going to play it that way. All the other games in the Open were drawn. Today, there was a lot of action in the ladies' event. The 3 out of 4 games were decided with a win, and actually, this was the marquee game because 2 of the 3 leaders were facing each other. Zhu Xiner was white against Anna Muzychuk. Anna has not really been worse all event. She did tell me she was minus 0.3 in round 1. That's the worst that she's been, but she does some very cool maneuvering here. I've got the d4 square highlighted. Now, you might think that this knight wants to go to d4, the knight on c6, but white will just trade. So what does she do to make sure she gets a knight to d4?
Well, let's look at the knight on f6. It's not doing that much, so let's try to remaneuver it, and we have a way to get there. First, you're playing knight d7, then, of course, knight e2. You're bringing first the rook to the d file, makes sense. Rook f2, now knight c5. And knight goes all the way to the e6 square to get to the g4. And let's not forget, in this position, very important, the pawn is on b3 from a2. So the other knight will go to the b4, targeting the c2 square. So b4 and d4 will be the key squares in this game.
Yep, I just love how it takes a knight 4 turns to get 2 squares by diagonal. But remember the concept of time. White's not doing much, so you do have the time to do slow maneuvering. So she gets the knight to b4, she's hitting c2, and then after a few sort of structural moves on the king side, she gets her other knight to d4. But now watch this. She's preparing to take on c2, even though she's going to give away both knights for a rook But when you have more rooks, you want open files. So what does she do first before giving away the knights for the rook?
Open the F file. Absolutely. Rooks loves files, definitely. And she's doing it before sacrificing her 2 knights. Usually, the side with the 2 knights is better against the rook, but in this case, we'll see how the open files matter.
Yeah, so this is an exception to the rule. It gives away 2 minor pieces for the rook, and now her rook completely occupies the open file. Already rook f1 is an issue because the knight is pinned, so white has to scurry back. I guess you could play rook f1 now, but king g2 and your rook runs away. So instead she collects another pawn, and the game actually ends in only a couple of more moves. She eventually squeezes her rook into the game, and after the move queen to g3, white resigns because the knights are completely ineffective to stop the idea of rook to h4. So pretty cool idea there. She just knew that giving away 2 knights was going to be perfectly fine.
Absolutely incredible game, and Anna Muzychuk is prolonging her winning and also leading streak, because in the next game we're going to see the other leader.
Yeah, Katerina Lagno.
Who didn't manage to score a win, even a draw today.
Right. So Anna is now +2. She did beat the pre-tournament ratings favorite as black. Katerina Lagno could not keep pace because in this crazy game, again, influenced by time pressure against Vaishali, well, Vaishali was black and she played bishop takes h3, which totally weakens the f3 square in case you capture. And so we'll just take a look at it. If you do capture, knight to g5 is actually the strongest move. Now, sometimes you take, sometimes you go here, but wait a minute. If white plays some passive move like rook c2, you could actually play rook f3.
Sacrifice the rook. Let's go.
The rook. And of course, you can't take because knight takes at least wins the queen. The rook's going to take and give checkmate, checking ideas. The knight's coming here, and there's just no defense. We don't even need to go through the rest. It's just terrible. So she sacked her bishop once for a double X slam. She's not done. Bishop h6, she saves the rook. Then she gets the bishop out of there. Then she plays bishop f3. Sometimes I've done videos where I've tried to make double exclam moves, and I won't stop the video till I make them. She just made 2 in about 4 moves with the same piece.
There is always a question. Is it a brilliant move or is it a blunder? And mostly I'm doing the latest, the blunders.
I feel you. Now the queen's coming here and checkmate. You got to take the bishop this time. But after takes, queen to d3, now again, she only had a minute left or something. She was so concerned about g6 that she played rook on f to f5, which temporarily gave away a little advantage. Actually, the clean win was rook takes. And the idea is if the queen takes, the queen can no longer go back to f1. So you just play the very calm queen h3 and queen g2 is coming. Very easy.
But she was, of course, worried because she had only 1 minute on the clock. It was just last moves before reaching the next time control. So I understand her decision. You want to keep it safe and play rook f5.
Yeah, and if bishop takes, by the way, now rook f5 is actually really good because you are going to be able to get your knight into this square, and that knight can never be captured because after rook takes and your king runs, I'm going to mate you on h1, and the knight is just too strong on g5. So, and just one last line, because who doesn't love 2 queens on the board? If pawn takes, I'm going to play queen g3 check. You got to go this way to avoid the mate on g2, but I check you anyway. Then I check you again, and when your king moves, let's just say I give you the worst move on the board, I promote to queen double checkmate. For those of you out there who are going to promote to rook, you're not a friend of mine because although you're technically right, why not get 2 queens? So that would have been
bishop.
Cool.
You can actually promote to anything.
That's true. You could get a bishop. So if you really want to be mean to your opponent, okay.
Under promotion over everything.
So if we go back to the game, rook on f to f5, slightly lets white off the hook. White got rid of that really, really annoying pawn, but then white slipped in this position. We could all understand wanting to get the queens off the board, but in doing so, that weakened g3, and then white ends up going down because there's no defense. If you play king h1, the rook just goes to g5, very simple, threatening queen h4 mate. And if you play queen to e2 to be able to block, how does black mate now?
Now queen h3, of course, because now white is taking the last square where king can go. Now queen f3, and the only way is to play queen g2, and there is a checkmate, of course. So that's why queen g2 was played, not to allow that. And queen e3 check. Now going from another direction, rook g5 was also a big threat, and rook g5 is coming now. Queen h3, queen f4, now a couple of checks. And, well, at some moment...
I finally got a couple checks here, and then this move ended the game. I've got a couple arrows on the screen to show you why Katerina Lagno resigned. If the king moves, rook takes bishop would be a discovered attack on the queen. So white did avoid mate, but white did not avoid the loss. So very cool game. By the way, Alexandra Goryachkina almost got the 4th win, but a fortress was held, and she was not able to break through. So there were still 3 wins in the ladies section. Anna Muzychuk playing some great chess here. Last-minute entrant into the tournament, but you wouldn't know it. So
And also Divya Dishmukh won again Divisara, so
I did not mention that. Yes.
important.
Divya did. I'm sorry for not mentioning Divya, but there was only so much we could cover.
Here.
Yes. Covering for my mistakes. You're welcome to do that anytime. Yeah, Sindarov is quite a story, even though the open section may not be in doubt for too much longer. It's still such a fun story. But the ladies section, everything is up for grabs, and we're looking forward to bringing you around more. So like and subscribe. You'll get to see my my game against the 12-year-old Cyprus female champion. Hopefully you'll get to see some Sindarov baby photos. And maybe we'll invite Angelika back. Would you come back if I invited you?
Absolutely. I love it.
Okay.
So we're going to see in the next rounds.
Okay. Thanks for joining us from the Fan Zone. We'll see you after round 7.